It's Toyota time.
I actually think I like this more than your Miata.
What?
What the f? I was just kidding!
15 years ago, we had the end of an era. The S2000 from Honda, the Pontiac Solstice, the Saturn Sky, Mazda RX-8, they were all falling off the face of the earth. But the NC Miata was in full swing. And actually, about the time my 2012 NC2 Miata was being built, that's when the twins came out. These new twins kind of filled a void in the industry where there was not many sports cars, and I'm glad they did. That would be, of course, the Scion FRS and the Subaru BRZ. Eventually, Scion also fell off the face of the earth, so then there was just the Toyota 86 and the Subaru BRZ. They're kind of joint co-developed stuff. We'll talk about that later, but from now on, I'm just going to refer to it as the 86 because that's what we have here, the GR86 from Toyota. So when the twins came out, I thought they were really cool. I remember seeing my first one in person in 2012, 2013 in Nashville, Tennessee. It like went around a corner and I was like, holy crap, that's a Subaru. Is that an all-wheel drive sports car? No, it wasn't, but yeah, I thought they were cool. But those have become kind of dated. That was now well over 10 years ago. They started feeling, yeah, a bit dated. Now we have this design. As you can see, definitely updated. It's actually been updated for a few years now, but I'm just finally getting my hands on it. And this is the new 86/BRZ. There's probably a lot of super nerds out there. If you want to give me, chassis codes or whatever down in the comments, let me know. But this is finally when I think it looks really good. I was a fan of the original ones before, but now I really, really like the design. The other ones felt a little like teenage-like enthusiast cars for high schoolers. This feels like a bit more grown up. This is price is tested 40 grand. That is quite a bit of money on one hand, but on the other hand, it's a sports car for much less money than a lot of Corvettes and even the Supra, kind of its older cousin thing, cheaper than every single Porsche. On the other hand, it is a relatively inexpensive sports car, and that's the space this exists in alongside the Miata, hence Miata Alt. You can get these as low as 30 grand and some change maybe for delivery and stuff. So any way you spec it, probably in the 30s. I think that's actually a decent bargain for what you get here with some caveats. This is the Hakone Edition. That's specifically not what I requested, but what Toyota gave me. And I was so excited when they did because, well, I'm a fan of bronze wheels. I'm a fan of green. That's my favorite color. So this is just like the perfect spec. Plus you get into the leather seats that you can kind of see in there with some tan accents, not overly done, which reminds me entirely of my original Miata. So I'm a big fan of this edition, the Hakone. It's not actually the first time they've done it, but this is the new, I think, Ridge Green, as they call it. So it's a bit more flat. The original Hakone back in 2020 was, of course, the prior gen, 86, although it was facelifted at that point, so a little bit better, but still old-fashioned compared to this. That one had, I guess, Hakone green, bit more pearlescent, I think, maybe even a bit yellowed. I like this color green quite a bit. Definitely flat, but dark bronze wheels, works with it nicely. And yes, this thing is 40 grand because it's fully loaded. Comes with a performance package, which is fairly new, and Brembo brakes and Sachs suspension, which we'll get into while we're driving. So these Brembo brakes, by the way, 4 piston in the front, 2 piston in the rear, comes with bigger calipers or bigger rotors as well. You got to have the 18-inch wheels, I believe, to fit around the brakes, which is interesting because I think on the website you can option 17-inch wheels. I'm curious if those actually fit. I've heard different things on that regard, but this has the bigger 18-inch wheels instead of the 17-inch option. Beyond the performance package, there are other things you can have installed, I believe, at the dealer. Actually, the dealer might also be able to do the performance package. It's kind of a weird thing with Toyota, like you can't necessarily build your own car. I think you like spec it how you want and then you find the closest thing to a dealer, but there's not a million options, so maybe you'll find one that you want, and then the dealer can add things like a GR exhaust, GR air filter, GR strut tower brace, GR short shifter, if you have the manual, which this isn't, and we'll talk about some of that in the driving. But cool that they can have mods from the dealer in this case. We're out filming this car and a few Mustangs came up and tried to show us who's boss. Actually really cool. Cool Mustangs.
They definitely have more horsepower in this car.
Not much less. Even the trunk has me jealous. Definitely a bigger size trunk than the Miata, and those fold flat so you can have even more access back there. So this is definitely a more practical car. The interior, while being an improvement over the previous one, is still pretty Spartan. Maybe to a fault. I mean, I think the Miata does take the cake as far as interior vibe and aesthetics, but this one's really not bad. These bucket-ish seats are really nice. I'm definitely jealous. My Miata does not have the bolstering these have. I love the suede leather combo. Big fan of that. Even my couch at home has that. But otherwise, it's just a bunch of like hard, not beautiful looking things. This looks straight up 10 years old. I like having some of these buttons. The knobs are nice. That's fine. But yeah, automatic. We'll get to that later. But cool Hakone badge right there. You even have Hakone puddle lights when you open the door. They shine on the ground. The steering wheel is pretty much unchanged. You got the GR badge down here. This is a digital screen now. I actually prefer analog technically, but digital's fine, whatever. This does CarPlay and Android Auto, only wired, but I actually like that. So that's weirdly a plus in my book. But otherwise, yeah, pretty basic. I will note, some people complain about having no grab handles whatsoever. You know, a lot of cars have like a handle here, including the Miata. I like having that handle. I do miss it. But the other side of me, which is a water enthusiast, loves having easy access for bottles, and they do fit in this car better than the Miata. So props to that. And unlike the Miata, this thing actually has back seats. Barely. I mean, you can't have legs, or you can have, you know, someone scoot the seat way up and then squeeze back there. Technically, you can fit people, preferably children, and pets, and that's where I think this does take the cake over the Miata, is the practicality standpoint. But the really Spartan interior doesn't really bother me. I mean, it reminds me of my NC Miata, which was not the nicest interior. I said the ND takes the cake over this, but the NC feels comparable. I mean, the point is not to gawk at, you know, a really fancy parlor. It's to drive this thing. So who cares what the interior looks like, right? As a Miata fan, I do feel somewhat compelled to compete with the enthusiasm and the fandom of the GR86. As good as the Miata is, this is considered the Miata Alt. So let's find out. Will this thing make me go, grr, I just wish I had my Miata, or will it give me 86 reasons why it's better? Toyota gave me the keys. Let's find out. So back in 2008, Toyota invested a bunch of stake into Subaru. Toyota went to Subaru and they were like, let's co-develop a 2+2 sports car. They suggested an offer of co-developing a D4S Boxer engine and had the whole thing kind of figured out. Subaru was like, nah bro, we only do 4-wheel drive. And so they rejected the offer and it kind of stood still for a bit. But then Toyota built, I guess, a development car, kind of a concept, proof of concept situation, and they invited Subaru to come and drive it. That was when Subaru changed their mind. So if you read between the lines there, then you can know that this thing really, truly drives great. Even back then when it was probably far from being fully developed. This thing is also properly powered now. Similar to the Miata's situation from 2018 to 2019 with the ND2, the second gen 8.6 developed a new engine, bigger displacement, unlike the Miata, which was just tweaking magic. I don't really know what they did there. Still 2 liters over there. But the new 2.4 liter replaced the 2 liter that was in the original 8.6 BRZ FRS. So improved the power to 228 horsepower, improved the torque, I think it's like 187 now, and most importantly, improved or erased, for the most part, that torque dip that everyone complained about. Literally everyone, people who didn't even know what a torque dip was, seemed to mention it with the same breath of the original 8.6. But this thing quotes, you know, a 0 to 60 time of 6.1 seconds with the manual, or 6.6 seconds with the automatic. But I think Car and Driver tested it individually, got 5.4 seconds. So maybe they're a bit conservative. But that's the point I want to make. This horrible automatic transmission is slower to 60. The excuses people give me a lot with the automatics is like, oh, you should get the automatic that's faster. that's maybe obviously the case with dual clutch and, you know, high-end automatics like PDKs. Even the ZF from BMW is really, really good, that you'll find in the Supra if you go up a notch in everything. But this 6-speed kind of, I think, ASIN-based automatic is really just not good. Don't bother. So I'm looking forward to trying a 6-speed manual, which I actually have at one point. I just didn't really take too much note of it because I was driving so many cars back to back. But the manual is definitely the way to go, partially because of, well, the fun of rowing your own gears, the more engaging feel. You can option it with the short throw shifter, which I think would be really interesting, but also you can just control, well, everything, because you need to if you get this performance exhaust. I don't know if I recommend this as performance exhaust. It's just kind of boomy, especially in that zone between 2,000 and 3,000 RPM. And let's face it, you're almost always in that 2,000 to 3,000 RPM zone in normal day-to-day driving. So if this is at all a daily driver, I wouldn't really recommend the exhaust or the automatic, at least not both together. I know plenty of people need an automatic, maybe for medical reasons, or that's just truly a preference and you don't enjoy the shifting gears, the rowing gears. That's fine. But if you have any inclusion of sports car enthusiasm, just get the manual. With the second generation, 50% more torsional rigidity, and also a little bit lower center of gravity by making the roof, the hood, and the fenders aluminum. Yes, it did technically gain a little bit of weight and probably a little bit proportions. Most cars do, except for the Indy Miata somehow. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. They did have to improve some safety. They added more stuff to this car in general and more displacement, and still kept the weight really close by making those shavings of weight from other spaces. The second generation was introduced in 2021, technically starting with the BRZ, and then Toyota followed up with the GR86. And, well, actually it was originally called the GR86, and then they had to change it to the GR86 with the space removed for digital marketing reasons. That's always fascinating to me. But the BRZ kept its name, and the styling is a little different. Otherwise, they're largely the same car. I mean, literally, Toyota, Subaru, co-developed. Makes sense. You'll see bits of Subaru, bits of Toyota. It's kind of interesting when companies do that, and Toyota seems to be doing that a lot lately. You also have, of course, the Supra, which is co-developed with BMW. I'm fine with that. I've seen people complain for some reason. Maybe they're biased against one brand or another, but in my view, if we want sports cars to exist, which have inherently a small amount of sales volume, then you're going to have to rely on interesting, unique partnerships, joint ventures. It's a way for companies to actually figure out the financials of making a car come to market when it doesn't sell much at all. I mean, if you really want to make a big seller, make an SUV like the Santa Fe holding up traffic. But I'm just kind of hitting this mountain road with some nice curves somewhat repeatedly because I'm really trying to get a feel for everything. Plus, I've been living with this car for most of the past week. So it's been good to experience in all sorts of situations, even stop and go traffic, which again is bad with this exhaust and not great with the automatic. People say an automatic is a reason to have a car in traffic, and I don't know, I'd rather just pick my own gear, but maybe that's just me. It's not like it's a hard manual to drive. It's one of the easiest ones imaginable. In fact, this is definitely a car you could probably teach people to drive stick on. Finally, some open, free road. And, you know, the exhaust sounds kind of good up top. It's really just that boomy lower section that I talked about where it's miserable. But otherwise, exhaust note, totally fine. I feel like there's a lot of aftermarket support for this car by now as well, so there's that too. Plus, the second gen's been out for a couple of years, so even second generation should have some support. And while there's no turbo, the welcoming earlier entry of torque into the torque band, plus the addition of power with the bigger displacement, just makes sense. That helps even climbing hills like this. You're not just having fun on the downhill, which does happen with some cars. And with the steering, that's kind of been some people's complaints. Not a lot, I mean, it's just fine. But like the Indy Miata, this went with electronic power steering. The EPS was also improved with, I think, second gen, maybe even a little bit in between model years. And I don't know, it's fine. You have definitely some steering feel, but not a lot. I do definitely prefer the hydraulic rack in my NC Miata, but I think the world itself has gone electronic power steering for the most part. And there's ways to do it well. I mean, Porsche has got EPS, and they're fantastic. But then you have Lotus, which stuck with hydraulics. So is there a right choice? But then there's just general comfort. And I think from what I've heard, the performance pack giving you the Sachs dampers all around, I don't know if those are necessarily worth it. They do add to stability, but they don't really affect ride comfort, which maybe is a good thing. I mean, having that added stability in cases of, say, track use or autocross, that could be nice. But on a daily driving situation, I mean, this is just as much comfort as you really need or could expect. Sure, some people might want more, but I definitely think this is not nearly the body roll that you'd find in the ND Miata. As I'm doing a U-turn, by the way, I can tell steering, turning circle, really quite good. Blind spots, really quite bad. That's going to be comparable with any Miata to top up, but I guess Miatas have the perk of being top down, and mine is usually that way. But switching into sport mode with manual control, that's where I usually like to drive this car, because again, I'd rather be somewhat in control of where the exhaust node is, almost more importantly than the power band, if that makes sense. But having control of the power band is also nice. So the way this car dips into corners, genuinely fantastic. I mean, it feels chuckable, just like a Miata. You feel that really nice weight distribution of the classic front engine, rear wheel drive approach. And this, I genuinely do get it. I see why these cars are so popular. It's genuinely the Miata alt. In fact, lately it's been outselling the Miata, which there's been headlines various years, depending on which year. You can kind of cherry pick your data to say anything you want, but in general, this one seems to do really pretty well with sales for what kind of car it is. And though it doesn't have as much power as my turbo Miata, I do see why they didn't go turbo. Actually, Jason Camise has a whole video on it, but if this had gone turbo, it would have also been a lot more expensive, and then you're getting into, well, super territory. So people complain both sides. People complain about not having the turbo that they teased or thought they would have in the second generation, but then people would complain about the price. So I guess no matter what, it's kind of a lose-lose. Or really what I think happened was a win-win. I think the natural aspirated power band is feeling really good, just like the ND2 Miata and ND3 now. And I don't think I'm really missing it. You really don't need more power. If you want it, I'm sure there's aftermarket solutions, whether it's turbocharging, maybe supercharging. If anyone's done that to their 86 or BRZ, let me know in the comments below. But I'm genuinely fine with this amount of power. What they did do is add really good brakes, and that's something I'm excited about. These Brembos are fantastic. You can get Brembos on the Club Miata, and I've seen people argue both directions on whether it's enough brakes. Most people with Miatas say it's enough brakes, but you can technically drive a car hard enough, there's a Miata, and get brake fade depending on your driving scenario. So I'd rather have more brakes than I need than questionably enough. It does rev out to 7,500, which is good. I think that's comparable to the ND. No issues there. But I will say, even once it revs out, like, the engine just doesn't have the best exhaust note. That, to me, is just a Boxer engine thing. I know there's a lot of Subaru fans love the Boxer engine. I've never really been about it. Oh my gosh, though, that exhaust tone around high 3,000 is just so miserable to my ears. But I feel like this is a pretty addicting car. It's definitely one of those where you get all the storage capacity, well, I say all the storage capacity, more storage capacity than a lot of cars in this enthusiast sports car segment. So it's one that you could have a lot of fun on the weekends in the canyons, just like this, but then take it to work every single day. Now, that being said, you won't actually get the same fuel economy as a Miata, so that's, I guess, a downside. But it's actually not terrible. I think it's just in the 20s, which is what most sports cars these days. But just throughout that entire hill climb, I found myself wanting to reach for a new gear. And instead I have to rely on these paddles, which then take a while to shift, and it's just, yeah, terrible. Terrible automatic, great car. Really great turning steering ratio too. But I just love having tons of brakes, because then you just have tons of, well, I guess maybe it'll make you a better driver if you don't have the best brakes, but I think this gives you a lot of ceiling room to learn. And something else I forgot to mention about the performance pack with these 18-inch wheels is Michelin PS4 tires, which are fantastic. So I feel like you have more than enough grip, more than enough brakes. Some people would debate it needs more power. I'm unexpectedly maybe not in that camp. Although at elevation, I'm sure I would change my mind. There's a reason I love the Supras so much, and I tested them both up at altitude. Turbo life. Wow, that Nissan is like the exact same color. Okay, I have Jess with me now, and you've also spent some time with the car.
Yes.
And what are your final thoughts?
I mean, I know you were hating on the automatic, but I love the automatic because I can't drive manual.
Right.
And the sound is horrible.
Oh, the muffler?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the exhaust note, you're not a fan.
No, it's terrible, especially for long drives. Like, I would never want to road trip this car because the sound is so awful, and I feel like I would end up with a headache after.
Yeah, you're sitting at like highway RPMs and it's not great. And we can try to drown it out with the sound system. The sound system's okay, not like amazing. And this has the premium sound system, so that's saying something. I do think the Miata has the edge on the sound system, but then again, this has like a lot of edge on storage capacity. I mean, we've thrown some things in the back seat after shopping, which is not really a thing you can do with the Miata. Sure, Miata's a trunk, but this has room for
My dogs.
your dogs, which I was gonna say, how do you rate this as a dog enthusiast?
Oh my gosh. I think my dogs would be thrown up in the backseat, especially if you were driving. But
Okay, well, no, if you're driving to the mall, then what?
I mean, it's fine. I still think the noise, I would worry that the noise would just be so hard for them to handle.
Yeah, so you would go no performance exhaust,
Yeah.
just the stock one, and be happy.
Yeah, and I love the color, I love the interior, I love everything about how it looks. I like the simpler dash and all the buttons, no like iPad in there, thank
Yeah.
God. But yeah, everything about it is great except for the exhaust.
Wow, really hates the exhaust. Okay, well, that's duly noted for dual tip exhaust that, yeah, get something else. Unless you are fine with that, but I feel like people should try that before they buy it. Because I was excited to see it on the Monroney. I was like, hell yeah, this is equipped with the exhaust. Now I'm like, dang, I wish it was a manual, and I wish it had no exhaust.
Yeah.
But then I'd go aftermarket if it was my car. So again, these have like huge aftermarket support. I'm curious what you guys, if you guys own these, let us know what you've done to it, because I'm really curious. I only know the Miata market truly. And then if you picked this over Miata, why? Okay, so my actual final thought is, I think I would pick the Miata. I like the drop top life. I like really the smallest car possible, and that just feels like perfect for me. But I do think while I pick the Miata, most people would probably pick this.
I would pick this.
What? No, get out here.
Thanks for watching.